Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm going to be showcasing a legendary Great League team from seasons past. Now this team consists of Galarian Stunfisk, Pelipper, and Shadow Venusaur. This team was created by FP Sticks all the way back in 2022, and it was arguably the best team in the entire Great League at that time, and for quite a while until the Wing Attack nerf. Now, with recent buffs to Pelipper and Galarian Stunfisk, I figured it was only fitting to take this team for a spin to see, can it still win in 2026? So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and in game number 1, we're off to a pretty negative start, Stunfisk into Jellicent. I'm going to go for a catch on a Pelipper after 7 mud shots, but my opponent just fires off their Surf on alignment. They were correct in assuming that I was going to try and go for the catch if they threw in good timing, but if they're just going to fire off their charge attacks as soon as they get them, then I should be able to get a pretty easy catch onto my Pelipper. So I farm up, switch into the Pelipper, and I'm able to catch the Surf. This saves energy on Galarian Stunfisk, and now my opponent is completely energy dry. My opponent sends in a Wigglytuff, and this works out nicely for me. I have 2 very strong answers to Wigglytuff with the Galarian Stunfisk and the Venusaur, so I'm always going to be happy to see it. My opponent ends up shielding up the Weather Ball. It wasn't at enough for a Hurricane, but I guess they're really trying to protect the Wigglytuff HP. However, that's going to end up backfiring on them as I can send in the Shadow Venusaur, and Shadow Venusaur is an absolute nightmare when it's able to get a shield advantage. So now I send in the Venusaur. Even though they're just firing off a Swift, I'm always going to be putting up the shield here, and just looking to farm up to 100 energy. My opponent sends in the Jellicent. I farm up to the back-to-back Frenzy Plants, and I go for a full undercharge, but even this full undercharge will still knock out the Jellicent. That's the power of Venusaur. Back in comes the Wigglytuff. I'm able to make it to the back-to-back Sludges, and now my opponent cannot afford to shield, because if they do, they're just going to be losing charge attack priority. Wigglytuff getting absolutely destroyed by a Sludge. In the back, they have a Ludicolo. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. We get the dream lead in the next match, Galarian Stunfisk into Charjabug. The Charjabug stays in, throws a Volt Switch, save switches into Annihilate, and I quickly respond with Pelipper. However, being down even a tiny bit of energy in this matchup is so bad for Pelipper, because due to Annihilate's new quick pacing, they're going to make a boosted Rage Fist before I can make the Hurricane. That means I'm going to have to go down a shield. The good news for me is that I will be able to keep switch advantage, but I really would have loved to not have to give up a shield to do so. I fire off the Weather Ball, down goes Annihilate, back in comes the Charjabug, and here I learned that I should actually go for 2 Weather Balls, because 2 Weather Balls will do more, but Hurricane still does quite a lot of damage, and here I end up making a pretty unfortunate misplay. My opponent pivots in the Jellicent, and I just click on the Stunfisk. I meant to send in the Venusaur, but with the amount of energy that I already have on the Stunfisk, I think I can hopefully still be okay here. I fire off the Rock Slide bait, get a shield from my opponent, and now I can barely make the Earthquake before they make Surf number 2. This Earthquake is going to be hitting for some pretty sizable damage onto the Jellicent. Jellicent with a very, very nice overfarm, and I'm just going to let the Galarian Stunfisk go. From here on out, it's the Shadow Venusaur show. In comes Venusaur into a loaded Shadow Ball, and that's going to force my final shield. I know that Charjabug does have a little bit of energy, so they bring back in the Charjabug, and we get the catch onto the Pelipper. Pelipper normally cannot deal with electric types whatsoever, but getting that catch is so incredibly important. Now I can bring back in the Venusaur. I already have the energy loaded for the Sludge, and my opponent knows that they have to put up the shield. It doesn't look like I'm going to be able to get the Vine Whip down here. It's going to be very close, but I think they will survive 2 Vine Whips. So, to be safe, I'm just going to fire off the Sludge. This will ensure that that Volt Switch will never register, and I should have enough HP to survive the Hexes. Back in comes Jellicent. They do not get the farm down as Venusaur hangs on to make the Sludge. Sludge may be resisted, but it is taking the knockout and getting the win. We move to game number 3, leading Galarian Stunfisk into Wigglytuff. This is an incredibly good lead. My opponent safe switches into Swampert. I respond with the Pelipper, just to find out that's not a Swampert, that's actually a Shadow Quagsire. I saw the typing, I assumed it was Swampert, and boy was I mistaken. I should have just brought in the Venusaur, but I assumed it was Swampert, and if it was a bait out to try and lure out a Grass type, then I wanted to save the Venusaur in the back. Unfortunately, this is a Quagsire, and Quagsire will be able to hit for devastating damage onto the Pelipper. So, unfortunately, Pelipper got sacrificed, but it's all for a better plan, because I'm going for the full farm down with the Shadow Venusaur. Shadow Venusaur now up energy. What are they going to do? Are they going to bring the Wigglytuff? Are they going to bring in their third? No, they're just going to top left, as that Wigglytuff had absolutely nowhere it could go. We pick up a pretty tricky lead in the next match, Galarian Stunfisk into a Shadow Shiny Gyarados. Shadow Shiny Gyarados is one of the coolest flexes I have ever seen. That looks incredible. I'm a little bit sad that I don't have my own Shadow Shiny Gyarados after seeing that. I did do quite a few of the Rocket Leaders, but unfortunately, it just never shined. Here, my opponent does actually overfarm a little bit too much, playing to the CMP tie Aqua Tail to the Rock Slide, so I'm able to force both shields. It's highly likely they try and go for a catch, and they make a catch onto Greedent. If my opponent is running the team that I featured in yesterday's video, then it should be a Unova Stunfisk in the back. If that's the case, then Shadow Venusaur with shields should be able to sweep. Greedent boosts itself up with the Trailblaze. A boosted Body Slam is going to do a ton of damage. I really need Pelipper to take the knockout with the Hurricane. Greedent is very bulky, but Hurricane does secure the KO. Back in comes the Gyarados. I'm always just going to be sacrificing the Pelipper here. My opponent baits with an Aqua Tail, and that was a bit of a misplay. Because now I'm able to get a Weather Ball, and even though it's resisted, this is still some very nice damage onto the Gyarados. My opponent undertaps. They do not want to take any additional damage. I'm going to be letting Pelipper go and sending in the Venusaur. I farm up, switch into the Stunfisk, and get the Sack Swap. We're able to preserve both shields for whatever they have in the back. They reveal it's a Shadow Quagsire. Oh no! Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. We pick up a very bad lead in the next match, Galarian Stunfisk staring down Togekiss. Now, Togekiss wasn't really a Pokemon in the Open Great League when this team was first released. It was a Charm user, it didn't even learn Aura Sphere, but now it's a Peck user. It can always win Charge Attack priority over Stunfisk, and Aura Sphere is absolutely deadly. My opponent will invest in Togekiss HP. I farm up, bank the Rock Slide, and get the Aura Sphere catch onto the Pelipper. Pelipper more than happy to take that damage. My opponent is going to be sending out Feraligatr. Feraligatr throws on 6, so this cannot be an Ice Beam. At worst, it's only going to be a Crunch. Crunch lands, that gets Pelipper very low. Pelipper does make the last second Hurricane, and this damage will be deadly if they let it through. My opponent double shields, and that is what I need to win this game. Because now I can go for a double shield reverse farm with the Shadow Venusaur, and suddenly their Togekiss is going to have nowhere it can go, because I have a Shadow Sludge loaded. I almost have 2 Shadow Sludges loaded, so Venusaur should be in a very good spot. Obviously, I still don't know what they have in the back, but they pivot into the Togekiss, and I have to imagine this is going to be deadly. Sludge lands, one shot onto the Togekiss. I'm assuming it was something like a Jellicent in the back, because they immediately resign the match. We pick up a bit of a scary lead in the next match, Galarian Stunfisk into Fearow. Fearow can survive one Rock Slide here. It will do quite a lot, but obviously with me being a Mudshot user, I can never farm them down. So Fearow is going to end up no-shielding. I'm going to be no-shielding as well, as Fearow will look to lock in some pretty critical damage. I can decide to overfarm here, and I do. I wait the turn, my opponent tries for a catch on a Jellicent, and now I get to respond with the Shadow Venusaur. Shadow Venusaur putting up the shield as they go for the Shadow Ball. I would love to go for a Sludge Bait, but on the off chance they let this go, I need to ensure that I can take the knockout. So I full send the Frenzy, Jellicent puts up the shield, but I'm realizing that I have enough energy that I should be able to always win the 2s here. I can make the back-to-back Sludges before they make their 3rd Shadow Ball. So I farm up, fire off the Sludge, and I will actually go for an Undercharge because I want to exit with a Charge Attack loaded for the Fearow. But they switch into the Fearow and they win Charge Attack priority. That was such a good punish to my Undercharge play. The Undercharge really ends up backfiring for me, as now I'm forced to bring in the Stunfisk. Stunfisk farms up to the back-to-back Rock Slides. I'm assuming they're just going to let the Fearow go, but now I'm a little bit worried because they still have that Jellicent and it's very close to a move. In the back, they have a regular non-Shadow Marowak. Some people are still holding on to the hope that these Mud Slappers are still good, but unfortunately, they are not the greatest. Even up a shield, Marowak is still going to struggle here quite a bit. What this game is going to come down to, however, is whether Jellicent can survive 2 Mud Shots. If Jellicent can survive 2 Mud Shots, then my Undercharge through the game. The Jellicent is very low, but Mud Shot does basically no damage. So my game plan is as follows. I'm going to bring in the Stunfisk and throw the Mud Shot and fire off the Rock Slide if they stay in. They bring in the Jellicent, and they survive the 2 Mud Shots on 1 HP. And my Undercharge lost me the game. If I just took the knockout, I win. But unfortunately, I tried to get fancy, and that ended up backfiring. We've got a Galarian showdown in the next match. Galarian Stunfisk into Galarian Corsola. Now, this matchup is absolutely a battle of the bulk. Corsola overfarming quite significantly, so I'm going to look to strike first with the Earthquake. I want to lock in some damage on the Corsola, but my opponent actually puts up an early shield. So they are very clearly trying to invest in the switch advantage. I'm very okay with basically just sacrificing the Galarian Stunfisk. My opponent makes a really nice play here. They could have fired off that Nightshade instantly, but it would not have secured the KO, allowing me to Earthquake and then pivot out. But by overfarming as much as they did, they not only secured the knockout onto the Galarian Stunfisk, but they exit with a bunch of residual energy for my Pelipper as I bring it in. Now my opponent should always go for the Nightshade here, and they do. Going for the Power Gem would have been a mistake, because the Nightshade is better pacing. The Nightshade means that I can't farm up as much as I could have if they went for the Power Gem. I overfarm, and I CMP-tie Weather Ball to their Nightshade. I'm able to take the knockout. In comes Wigglytuff. I send in the Venusaur, and my opponent is not switching out. And oh my goodness, they try and catch a Sludge onto Gastrodon. People really gotta let the Mud Slappers go, man. They are not great anymore. Frenzy Plant takes the knockout. Back in comes the Wigglytuff, and there's just no way out. Shadow Venusaur is too deadly. Wigglytuff puts up the shield, desperately hoping that Venusaur isn't dead in another move, but Venusaur's already at the Sludge, so I can just undertap the Sludge, and that's going to be a win. Down goes Gastrodon Wigglytuff core. Man, Shadow Venusaur was just too much fun today. We move to the next match, Galarian Stunfisk into Wigglytuff. We've seen this lead before. My opponent not switching out, they're staying in this matchup, and if they're staying in, they must be so core broken, and they're throwing on alignment as well. They're just firing off the Icy Wind as soon as they get it. I'm more than happy to stay in here and play this out. They've debuffed me, Earthquake not going to do a ton of damage, but they shield. How weak are they in the back to Galarian Stunfisk? I absolutely have to know. I fire off another Earthquake. Earthquake is going to be connecting onto the Wigglytuff. My opponent overfarms to throw on alignment once again. They're handing out free mud shots like candy. Icy Wind lands, I pivot into Pelipper. My opponent responds with Bastion, and you're about to see in real time that Bastion is pretty terrible post-nerf. This is Bastion into a flyer, and not even a particularly tanky flyer. I'm just going to farm up. They throw again on alignment. This is just the average Bastion player. They are throwing every single charge stack on alignment, but look at this. Pelipper, I'm going to get to 4 Weather Balls before they farm me down. Bastion, it is just in absolute shambles. They are getting KO'd by a Pelipper momentarily. Weather Ball gets them low. I make another Weather Ball, and they end up catching onto Wigglytuff. They had to catch because they would have gotten knocked out. I undercharge, snipe with the Venusaur. What do you have in the back, Basti Wigglytuff player? Probably a Mud Slapper, as they will resign the match. We see a pretty familiar lead matchup in the next game, Galarian Stunfisk into Galarian Corsola. Again, I'm very comfortable playing out this lead matchup as the Galarian Stunfisk because, as I've learned, 2 Nightshades do not secure the knockout. So, I do win the Zero Shield as the Stunfisk. Earthquake lands, Corsola returns fire with the Nightshade, but I'm very okay with letting this go. Ideally, I would like my opponent to throw instantly, which they do, and then shield the Earthquake, so then I can get up energy and up a shield with the Pelipper. So, Stunfisk is able to hang on. I fire off the Earthquake, hoping for a shield. My opponent lets it go. I look to send in Pelipper, and that's a big problem. My opponent reveals in the back they have a Shadow Galarian Weezing. So far, entirely a Galarian team from my opponent. And with the Shadow, I'm very worried that I will not survive a Sludge. I know Pelipper has okay bulk, but its bulk is definitely not top tier or anything, so I just have to cross my fingers and hope. Come on, Pelipper. Sludge lands. That does huge damage, but Pelipper, thankfully, is able to survive and make the Weather Ball. Weather Ball forces the final shield. This does set up Venusaur, but my opponent has a ton of energy. So I bring in the Venusaur, switch into the Stunfisk, and get the catch. That is step 1. Now I have to be very careful that my opponent does not catch a Sludge onto a Pokemon that resists it. So my game plan is pretty simple. I'm just going to keep farming. My opponent can never catch a move that I don't throw. So I farm up. They have a Shadow Quagsire in the back, and this game is over. Shadow Venusaur, you monster. Frenzy Plant takes down the Quagsire. Frenzy Plant number 2 is going to be taking down that Galarian Weezing, and the Shadow Venusaur just keeps on feasting. A tough lead returns in the next match, Galarian Stunfisk into Jellicent. Now this matchup is very, very tough because ideally Stunfisk wants to try and catch out of it because Jellicent's neutral matchups are just so incredibly strong that it's going to destroy both the Stunfisk and the Pelipper unless I'm able to get a catch somewhere. Now it's a bit of a guessing game. Do they throw 1 hex in the move or 3 hexes in the move? I decide they're going to overfarm, so I stay in and I'm actually able to get the Rock Slide. Rock Slide will get the Jellicent very, very low. Jellicent puts up the shield. I throw 1 Mud Shot, switch into the Pelipper, and I get the catch. There was a little bit of a pause there. I was scared that they threw the Shadow Ball anyway, but they didn't. They ended up going for the Surf. However, it's bad news for Pelipper as I get swiftly answered with Charge-a-Bug. Charjabug is going to absolutely destroy my poor Pelipper. I make the Hurricane, but unfortunately, I am very, very low on the Galarian Stunfisk. I think they can actually knock me out with 2 X Scissors, and they absolutely will. I try and get the Rock Slide, but I don't have the energy that I need. It's going to have to be the Shadow Venusaur show in the back. So, in comes Shadow Venusaur, looking for the full farm down. I get the full farm down. Now we have a bunch of energy. What do they have in the back? A Volt Switch Fortress. That's a team breaker for sure, and I will resign the match. Hopping to the final match, and wow, this actually does feel like 2022. Galarian Stunfisk versus Lantern. This is a Water Gun Lantern. Based on how much damage the Water Guns are doing, I'm pretty confident that in Zeros, I can Rock Slide bait into Earthquake. I'm worried that my Venusaur will not have a lot of play in the back, but I'm hopeful that Pelipper will be quite strong. Rock Slide bait gets no shielded. Oh my goodness, that is absolutely stone cold from my opponent. I'm going to fire off the Earthquake now, hoping to take the knockout, and my opponent actually just sacrifices the Lantern. In comes Malamar looking for a farm down, but I get the damage registration error with the Galarian Stunfisk. I'm able to hold on and make a last second Rock Slide. That is genuinely extremely valuable damage for me. I send in the Pelipper, no shield as they connect with the Foul Play, and my heart drops as their final Pokemon is revealed to be Murkrow. As expected with the Lantern lead, they have very strong anti-grass in the back, and my Venusaur has nowhere it can go. I shield up the Drill Peck, I'm at the back-to-back Weather Balls, and Weather Ball will actually threaten quite a lot of damage on the Murkrow. Murkrow shields the first, it could have been a Hurricane. This one can only be a Weather Ball, but even a Weather Ball would add up. My opponent double shields, and suddenly, there's a chance. I just have to ensure that my opponent does not get the catch. I have the Sludge already. I have to watch for the switch. There's the switch into the Malamar. I can throw 4 Vine Whips and the Sludge, and this should be perfect. The Malamar was 1 Psywave away from the game-winning Foul Play. They should be 2 off on the Murkrow, and with perfect energy management, somehow Venusaur knocks out Malamar and knocks out the Murkrow to secure that game. Man, I had so much fun getting to run this classic FP Sticks team today. The team, I would say, surprisingly aged pretty well. The buffs to Galarian Stunfisk and Pelipper do help it out quite a bit, but I really felt like the star of the show was the Shadow Venusaur. It's pretty clear that one of the best cores you can run right now in the Open Great League is Jellicent plus Wigglytuff. It's very hard for teams to break that core, because Jellicent, it has insane neutral matchups unless you are a normal type or a dark type. And you know what beats those? A Wigglytuff. However, the Venusaur having play into both sides of that core ended up proving to be a really strong anti-meta pick. Now, there are definitely some Pokemon that give this team trouble. A Fortress anywhere, regardless of fast move, is going to be very, very difficult, but especially the Volt Switch Fortress, because Volt Switch Fortress just completely shuts down Pelipper and completely invalidates all of Venusaur's energy. I would say Jellicent, if it's on the lead, is also a little bit tricky, but by getting a Surf Catch onto the Pelipper, you can put yourself in a pretty good spot to overcome that difficult matchup. But now, the moment of truth. How did we do with this team? Well, I ended up going back and counting up all the wins, and I believe we went 17-8 with this team live on stream. Considering this was a team that was created in 2022, the fact that I could run it today in 2026, and with the buff to Wing Attack and the buff to Mud Shot, actually go very, very positive was a pretty big shock to the system. I think in large part it was due to the Venusaur. The other two were kind of the supporting cast, but I felt like game after game, it was that Shadow Venusaur at a shield or energy advantage, just taking down team after team and taking home the wins. So big shout out to FP Sticks. He's a creator who I watched so much before I even had a channel myself. And I'm very happy to get to do a little bit of an homage to him with this team, and that the team still put in so much work. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed watching today's video and this little trip down memory lane, then please do leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you have not. And an extra special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide to the channel is so appreciated, so thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.